Hello, and welcome to the Art of Abundance podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Lisa Peterson. I'm so very happy that you're joining me today. I am sharing part 4 of a conversation that I had with Lincoln, Channel for Higher Self. I know that you've probably already listened to a few of these episodes. I am guessing that you really have been enjoying them. I hope that you leave comments and feedback and questions that come up as you hear our conversation. I know that we covered a lot of ground, so feel free to reach out. I'll make sure that your questions get answered. And
No time. If you put pause, like the movie, you could pause a movie. If you would pause your life right now, right, your consciousness would pause also, and nothing would be changing, and time would still pass, but there's no perception of time because you're not witnessing anything changing. You usually in the movies, you pause the surroundings and you move, right? Yeah. But no, let's pause everything, and your consciousness will still perceive this, but there's no time now because there's no change being perceived. So the speeding up of time is actually the speeding up of change in forms. Right? Mm-hmm. If you think about time also, how do we measure time, right? It's the movement of atoms, right? There's the atomic clock, like how much this certain atom, I don't know what it is, but vibrates, because it vibrates a certain number of times per second, like, so many milliseconds. And that becomes our standard of time. Then there's how fast light moves, and that's a standard of time. And how fast sound vibration moves, that's a standard of time, right? How long it takes for the moon to go around its full cycle of illumination, right? That's a standard of time, right? How long it takes the earth to move around the sun, that's 1 year, that's a standard of time. So we have all these standards of time based upon the movements of the forms. And if we want to create anything, any of our personal goals, we just need to add more energy, more creative power, more action, more something, right? More of what it needs into that experience. And if we have a good understanding of that process, like studying where we want to go and where we're starting at, then we can add exactly what it needs along this whole process, and we can get there in the fastest of ways. Right? So all we're doing, we're not waiting for things to happen. Some people say, I want $1 million in 5 years. And they create the reality that I'm waiting 5 years. And therefore, how they think about what they're doing slows down. Right? Who's to say you can't create $1 million right now? And then you'll be very motivated, as long as you have everything else in alignment, of course. And you can start building it and creating it. And the $1 million may come in 5 years or 2 years or 10 years. But at least what you're doing in the present moment is adding as much energy as you can. And doing it in an intelligent way, of course. You have to add the energy it needs. For example, you can't bang a pot of water with a wooden spoon trying to get it to boil, right? Mm-hmm. The water will jump, and it may look like it's boiling, right? But it's not really boiling water. You can hit that pot all day long for hours, and it's not going to boil because you're adding the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Some people do that. They try to build a business, and they're doing it the wrong way. They're adding the wrong thing. And they're like, I'm trying so hard, and I'm working at it. And we say, wait, why are you doing this? This isn't going to get you the result you want. We have to look at the result and go back in time. And that's one of the best ways to get clear on a process. Start at the goal, even at sections along the process. Start there, see what it looks like to be completed, and now trace it back to where you are. How can you get there, right? It's like doing a maze when you're a young child, right? You're given one of these drawing mazes, and you have to go in the entrance and get to the center, right? And some of those mazes are really complex, and it takes you hours and you can't figure it out. Well, that's like trying to build a business. So what do? You start at the center of the maze. And then you try to work your way back to the beginning, and you can solve the maze a lot quicker. Well, guess what? Your mind can do that in your life. Look at an example of how a good business is run and try to duplicate it, right? Look at an example of how a successful business person thinks and try to think like them. Go backwards. Right? Don't think like, okay, I want to make myself successful. Like, what does that mean? How does it work? It's going to take a lot more time. It's like trying to do the maze from the outside. Go to the example. Who do you want to be like? What are your role models? What type of business do you want? How does it look? And then go backwards from there, and you'll find, wow, I understand all these steps. And then you go forward through the maze, already having traveled it in your mind, knowing exactly where you have to go.
Mm. So knowing where you want to go, having a plan to get there. One thing I just want to touch on in this conversation, which has been had so many dimensions to it, there will be things that you say that are incredibly powerful and helpful, but they also trigger, like I watched my thoughts as you speak and thought, yeah, I'm definitely like, there's some tweaking like that needs to happen. Well, I've been doing this a lot. And so I don't typically beat up on myself when you say something that I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But I do watch that people often will be very hard on themselves. So you've said some things and it triggers resistance, right? Because it's like, well, gosh, how embarrassing. I created a video yesterday. I'll give you a specific example. There have been some things you've said, and I'm like, I'd really like to go back and just do that video again. And we talked about this in one of our sessions, like you're never complete and you're constantly learning.
Yeah.
But any advice on how to keep that pattern from taking over and actually diminishing the teaching?
Yeah, make another video.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Why? Right? Because now you have the understanding you didn't have before. Okay. You've learned through this process. You didn't make any mistakes. You've grown. Every experience we have evolves us. So you've gained. Okay. Now, can you honor that new understanding and bring it into the physical world as that expression? Because what stops us is we feel bad, we feel shame, we feel guilt, and then we don't honor that new understanding. Right? We had the new understanding. That's why we're now feeling guilt. We realized, oh, I made a mistake, or oh, I did something I shouldn't have done, or I said the wrong thing, or wow, that information's not as nice as what he says. So I gotta feel bad about that. It's like you didn't have the information you have now. You didn't have the experience you have now, and you weren't wrong for doing it the way you did it before. You did it the best you could, given the whole journey that your soul has been on, even before this lifetime. Celebrate that. And celebrate, wow, I learned more. And then go and take what you've learned and bring it into your physical life, bring it into the forms. And for you, that's the video, that's your business, like that may be how you live in other parts of yourself. Yeah, so always honor growth, always be grateful. Yeah, one of the challenges we have is when we've learned how to do it, it's the whole mind is a structure of learning. We've learned how to resist change. We've learned how to think about the past and put ourselves in a lower place. Why? Because our parents did, or because maybe we had a teacher who talked down to us when we were in first or second grade. There can be many reasons why we learned this behavior. So for the transformation of the behavior, because that's a different thing, right? Bringing the good expression through is helping to weaken that behavior, because you're saying, you know what, that self-judgment, that's not going to stop me. That part of my mind is not more powerful than my conscious self, than what I want to create. Because the voice you hear, the emotions you feel, that's the learned memory-based conditioning, your subconscious mind. It's what's already stored beneath the level of your conscious mind. So there's your subconscious mind, your conscious mind, then your higher mind. That's where you receive your guidance for your future. Your subconscious mind is where you receive the understanding from your past. That's all they are, right? They're not evil. We don't have to go in and try to get rid of them or change them, right? It's not about something to get to, like God save me. You have a part of your mind that guides you from the future, a part of your mind that guides you from the past. And we're in the middle. And we're the ones having to decide, do I listen to my future self, the part that empowers me, the part that helps me to reach my goals? Or do I listen to the past part of myself and let that hold me back? Now, the past part must be honored. We're not supposed to try to get rid of it, because the past allows us to go on this journey. It holds the understanding. We have to learn how to work with our mind to not do things like you referenced, right? Where we judge ourselves, we feel bad about what happened. We can look at the past and say, you know what? Awesome. I did it. I'm so confident I made that video. It took a lot for me to even get to the place in my life where I could stand in front of a camera and speak to a whole audience. So I celebrate that. I celebrate that I'm learning more. Who knows? Maybe if I didn't make that video, we wouldn't be having the conversation we're having right now, and I wouldn't have had those new realizations, right? So that video is a blessing, right? Every part of your life can be seen as a blessing and in support of you. And that's, again, this aspect of not pushing things away. That's how I live my life. Everything's in support of me. I don't find a person I don't like. I don't have an experience I wish never happened, right? Because I go into it and like I find the nectar as best I can. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. But I try to get out of it what's for me. The best that I can see, the best I can understand, the best I can embrace. I try to do my personal best. And it's not a stressful thing. It's about me showing up from my heart, about me showing up in an energy of peace and awareness, of really being present, so I'm connected to everything. My understanding is that the mind learns on its own. Right? You read a book and the information becomes a part of your mind now. You didn't have to convince your mind. You didn't have to know what spark plugs to connect and wheels to turn. It just happened. If you can be open, you can learn. Your mind can learn. This is a study I came across when I was very young, when I was in college, that a child learns best when they're in a stress-free environment. Right? Put them in a physical chair that's not uncomfortable. Just sit in for long hours a day. That's number one, which we're not doing because we have a very militaristic type of school system. And what do we learn about the history of war? Like, come on, how's that helping us? We should learn about how to communicate with our friends so we're not having arguments. Right? We should learn about how to treat other human beings so children aren't feeling neglected, so not being teased, bullied, or criticized. We should learn how to be humans. We should not learn how global warfare has happened on the face of this earth. But we should learn that it has happened and why it's not important and why we should move away from it. Right? We should not ignore it. We should learn and transform. But there's so much else that we have to transform inside our personal selves to even get to a place in society where the global society will move away from war and violence. Right? Because even criticizing yourself, I'm not judging you, but this is how I view it. Criticizing yourself, it's attacking yourself. It's bullying yourself. And the mind does it to itself all the time. Why? Well, guess what? Look at the system we were raised in.
Yes.
Right? You didn't choose it from your soul. So the system taught you. You absorbed it from being in this world before you were old enough to understand you're even absorbing it. Right? Yeah. Before you could choose, I don't want to read this book. I don't want to be in this situation. Right? You were put in that situation and you were affected by it. Right? And now we wake up, we say, you know what? This is just what it is. I'm okay with that, but I want to change some things. And then you come in with that sense of empowerment, feeling that I'm the free consciousness, and act as best you can to support everything. Okay, so the part of your mind comes up. I'll give you some more practical guidance. Okay, the part of your mind comes up that says, I'm not good enough for what I did. Okay, let that be there. Okay, don't go into it. Don't try to heal it or change it. Just let it be there. And you'll notice that you shifted your energy. When that thought came up, a part of your emotions changed because the silent understanding that was learned from your past, that's held in the subconscious, it bubbled up to the surface. And when it hit the surface, there were feelings, right? It's like the bubbles of water. And there was a thought that's like the sound of the bubbling water, okay? So what caused the sound and what caused the waves on the top of the water? It was what happened at the bottom of the water. Okay, so what's happening at the bottom of the water? That's that silent understanding, right? That's what caused the reflection. That's the understanding that we have to get to change. That's one reason why meditation is so good, because now for the first time, we get to be aware of this process and observe the bubble coming up. We can even observe the bubble forming, right? We can get so still, right? We're in meditation, we're in that place of stillness, and we feel there's a little movement, tiny movement happening in my energy field. And that movement starts to rise. And as it rises, now I start to feel emotion in my body. And then I start to have these thoughts. And it's like, wow, that's the process. Right? So we can be so still that we can observe what's actually happening. And as we have observation of it, now our consciousness is in it. Okay, so we've connected, our consciousness expanded into the forms of one of these layers of our multidimensional self, body, emotions, mind. And once we're aware of it, we're in it. The next step is working at it, expressing into it, changing it by being this consciousness. And that's really what we're all doing as creative souls in the form-based universe, is we're taking our formless consciousness and expanding it into the forms. And the forms that we can touch, that we can get our consciousness into, we now can create with. Awareness of it is the first step. So we work to expand our awareness. That's what true meditation, as I call it from my language, that's what true meditation does. Right? Affirmations, they're changing. They're action-based systems. We want to increase the awareness first so we can connect with more of what's happening in our reality. Once we become aware of it, now we can focus on the form itself and then try to use that will, that intention, try to do what the form needs to do. Try to give it what it needs, right? Give water heat to boil. Well, how do I change my emotion? We have to learn how to get our awareness in that feeling location of our energy system in one of the chakra areas. And then we need to learn how to use the conscious understanding, which is silently held. Just like the subconscious mind was silent, we have to hold that silent understanding, feel that part of our body, and together they're going to create a spark and we're going to feel some emotion start. Right? So you're going to feel confidence happen or happiness happen or peace happen. And you did it consciously. Right? It wasn't a reaction from what you saw or heard from the world. It was now something that you started. Right? You created from the beginning because it was your intention to start that experience. Right? So we can do that emotionally. That's yeah, it takes some time and practice. So for yourself, okay, you have it bubbling up. You can try to find it as deep as you can. Try to get into it, become more aware of the process. And whatever level you're at, try to work at that level to change it. Right? Maybe all you are aware of is the thoughts. Maybe you can't feel where the energy is coming from. So then use affirmations. Right? Don't fight against the thoughts. Come back to center, right? Come out of the reactive energy and then connect with yourself. Now you're back in that empowered, creative consciousness space. And then create what you're able to. Create affirmations if that's where you're at. If you're doing energy practices or learning how to work with your chakras or maybe Reiki healing, then do that. Now you're in that next level, your energy body. There's depth to that energy body, and the depth takes us into the chakras and into the understanding part of our subconscious mind. So try to be aware. What's really happening? What's the next level that you can become aware of? Try to create there. Right? There's also the practice of just being the awareness, and that's like the giant eraser. That's what I call it, because it's emptiness, silence, and stillness. So you add that to any of the forms, well, it erases what's happening. So that's a way to calm and quiet as well. But if we want to be able to create with form, being the eraser is not enough. We have to be aware of the form, and then at the level of our awareness is where we can begin creating from. And if we can become aware of the beginning of where that bubble was forming, we can create the beginning of our mind. And then we can create new thought, any understanding we want. Okay, so step one, come back into awareness, right? Center yourself as the awareness, get out of the reaction. Okay, and for you, maybe where you're in it, because the way you described it, you heard it, you felt it, it didn't take you over, right? You had clarity to witness it. And that's because of your practice and meditation and where your soul's at. Okay, so come back to that centered place and then engage in the part of the self, the part of your mind, body, or emotion, that is doing the creating. Okay, so as best you can. Is it a thought process? Are you going to work with the feeling? Can you hold that silent intention of knowing? Like, how does it, it's so hard to describe in human words because we don't really have English words for it. It's like a silent feeling of knowing. Like it's more like a feeling sense, but it's in your mind. It's a knowing energy. So go into that knowing. It's like you have already learned something. If you have enough experience to learn that you are, it's going to be a little challenging because we have conflict. We haven't learned it fully yet, but knowing you're a confident person, right? Knowing you can do anything, right? You're confident, I'm empowered, right? Go into how it feels when you're feeling that empowered state, right? And so feel that, what's it like right now to be empowered? And you're not telling yourself it with thoughts that you speak. You're in that knowing, you're in that reality of being that knowing. And then feel what happens in your emotions. And you may notice there's a part that's blocked, right? It's like a dark area, a stuck area. Okay, then stay being that empowered emotion or that empowered knowing state. and focus on that blocked area and watch what happens. And just keep focusing on that knowing. Right? Knowing you're the empowered one. Okay, so I'm going to stop you. So, what was your experience if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah. So it just starts to grow. That expansion is the
Mm-hmm.
way the expanded energy starts
Mm-hmm.
to grow, and there's no perception of the resistance or the block.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and did you feel any change in the block itself? Not your awareness of the block, because sometimes when we meditate, we go into the consciousness and we leave the emotional body. And so
Mm,
we'll feel, I expanded back to myself. Well, that's awesome. That's great. But you may have left awareness of the emotional body. So the emotional body didn't really get changed.
mm,
Right? So we have to really try to be in the form of that emotion. Now,
mm-hmm,
what we'll feel is that blocked area opens up. Okay, it's different than our consciousness. Well, our consciousness may expand around us, but we'll feel that blocked area. We have to stay focused on the form we're working with, because it's so easy, especially as a learned meditator. We've taught ourselves how to shift away from all the forms and go into the consciousness. Have a vacation, right? It's really beautiful, right? But if we want to change things, we can't go on vacation, right? We have to be with the company or be at the home. That's where we change it. Right? And so we have to learn how to balance being that awareness with the form. It's like the example I gave at the beginning of our talk of being the fish bowl, right? And not just being aware of the glass bowl, which is clear and open, but also being aware of the water that's inside that bowl. Right? Can you change the water? And can you feel that tight area that holds the understanding of resistance or self judgment, whatever it may be? And can you be with it? And can you bring what it needs, right? A new energy like the heat to the water. Can you bring that into that part of your body? And you'll feel it start to change. Now, things can happen, sometimes scary things. You can find that part getting very upset. You can become more aware of the karma or the impression in your mind. And so sometimes you're working on it and you feel emotion of sadness, or a memory comes up of a powerful experience in your past that is related to why your mind feels this way. You might find that part of your mind resisting you, right? Resisting you coming into it because it feels threatened and unsafe, right? Like we said in the beginning, we learn from this world. And sometimes what we learn are these limiting beliefs. If you had a traumatic experience, well, you've learned to feel unsafe in the world because it had threatened your life before. Okay,
mm,
so you learned that that part of your mind is felt as a memory still and as a knowing. And it might say, no, like I'm not opening up. It's not safe to open up. Not here, not now, not in this world. And so now you're feeling this part that has a very rational, very good reason to not open up and let go of its protective feeling, its defensiveness. So we have to work with that part of our mind. And then you might find, okay, I heard it talk, right? I heard it talk. I'm going to talk to it. So now you're the conscious mind talking to the subconscious mind. It's two parts of your own mind dialoguing. And we start to have a conversation with that other part of our mind. And so we ask it, like, how are you doing? What do you need? What do you feel? We want to open it up. We want to honor it. We want it to communicate with us because, like the boiling water, we have to understand what it needs. A lot of healing methods just throw energy at it, right?
mm-hmm,
Or just do this affirmation that's not personalized in any way. It's like hitting the pot of water with a spoon. It's not going to boil that way. You need to know what this part of you needs. If you understand the wounding, if you understand what was taken away from this part, maybe it was your feeling of safety. So, how can you, as a soul consciousness, bring that feeling of safety back into this part of your mind? So
mm-hmm,
now, in that meditative state where you're connected, you have to be able to consciously communicate or express. The best way is to express energy that adds back what was lost. Okay. Because we're trying to bring wholeness and completion to a fractured part of our mind. the part of our mind lost something. It lost confidence. It lost a feeling of love. It lost something, and that caused it to then react and protect itself. Right? We have to first establish its sense of trust. The more we do this inner work with ourselves or with a therapist or coach, the more that that part will start to open up and let the other person or the conscious part of our mind in. And then we have to be able to honor it, receive what it has to communicate. We have to listen to it. It's like in a relationship, right? When you're hurt, the first thing you need to do is you need to talk to whoever hurt you, right? Or talk to a friend. You need to be heard because you have all this bubbling up inside of you that you're holding on to. And there's a healing that comes from being heard, from being received. Right? Some healers, sometimes we do therapy, sometimes we do these exercises. We're not listening. We're telling it what to do. And we're just like the person who hurt us. We're telling ourselves, you shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't be this way. It's not right. We're wounding ourselves. Right? It's like a young child. The child's hysterical crying. What do you need? Come here, sit down. It's okay. Tell me what's going on. And the child's struggling to find its voice and tripping over its tears. And eventually the child explains what happened. And even that's a relief. That's the opening up of the mind. The child trusts the parent and says, here's what's causing me pain, and gives it to the parent. And then the child's waiting, right? The child opened up, made itself vulnerable, waiting to be healed, to be helped, to have something, because the child couldn't do it on its own. These wounded parts that are holding onto the trauma, they were unable to complete the process on their own. Maybe they didn't understand enough. Maybe they weren't supported in the right way. Maybe they weren't heard. The process wasn't completed. That's why we're still holding it. It's not because the process was bad or wrong. It never completed itself. And so the child, the part of us, has to open up and express. And now it's an open container to receive. Because you can picture like holding on to everything, we're closed. And we open, and that what was inside now gets released into the environment. Okay, now we're able to then receive into that new space that was just created when we spoke. As you know, probably with your husband, you're feeling a lot of emotion. You need to talk about it. He just needs to listen first, not interrupt you, not judge you, not tell you what to do, not tell you how to fix it, right? Men are good at that. We always want to fix it right away. Woman needs time, and she needs to just let the experience be expressed. That in itself begins the therapeutic process. Okay, so our minds like that. We have feminine and masculine parts of our mind. Everybody does. We're all part male, we're all part female, just in different types of balance. So we listen to that part, let it express, and then once it's expressed, it's already started calming down, which means now it can receive. Right? If you're in a strong state of emotion and he's trying to talk to you, you can't listen to him. He just makes you more upset because you feel I'm not being received yet. Right? There's still more inside of me that needs to be expressed.
What's so funny is when I'm hearing you and I'm doing what you're saying, and the expression was, I'm scared of being attacked. And I've never seen that before, but look at how we started the conversation. And there it was, right? So
yeah, and I'm seeing things now as you bring that up, because we're connected into the universe, and so that relates to you shining yourself, right? So you're scared of being attacked by being the bright light in the world, drawing attention to yourself, because if in that traumatic experience, if you were seen by the shooter, you could have been killed.
Yeah.
Right. And so you were hidden, and that made you feel safe. And so where do you hide yourself? In your business, in your life, because it makes you feel safe. And this can be an emotional safety, like beyond criticism, right? If we're working on self-confidence, we don't want to be criticized, right? So you're going to feel yourself hiding because it's safe. And you know what? That's a good thing, right? It's a good thing to hide if you're under threat, right? But we have to also look a little deeper, right? Because it's a good thing sometimes, and it's not a good thing other times, right? In the situation that traumatized you, it was a good thing, right? That was the right course of action. But your mind then started to connect that understanding to all these other parts that also tie into other experiences of trauma earlier in your life. So it's like a web that gets knotted together.
Totally.
Yep. And so now we need to start to untangle it and say, you know what? I did the right thing. It's okay to be reserved if I don't want to be seen, because there are threatening things in the world, right? You're a
Mm-hmm.
woman in the world. If you would, I'm just going to throw out an example. I don't know you. It's just totally impersonal. But if you really, say you really like how you look in your bathing suit, right? And you think, I look really good in this new bathing suit I got. You don't walk down the street in the bathing suit, right? Because you're being seen too much. It's going to draw attention that could be threatening. You could get hurt, or verbal comments, things that bruise your emotion. So you've learned in what situation is it appropriate to display certain parts of myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to use physical examples because we can all see it. Now let's make it an emotional example, right? In what situations is it safe for you to speak your voice? Well, if you're in a relationship with an abusive husband or an abusive parents, it's not safe. But if you're trying to build your career, it is safe and it's necessary. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to like untangle this understanding, not criticize it. It's right to have learned when to turn off our voice when it causes us problems. But we can't take that same learned behavior and apply it into other areas that need us to express ourselves.